children being brought up to be martyrs.
Killing as many Jews as you can. What is with the hypocrisy? You're anti-Israel, you're anti-Jewish. There's no sugarcoating that.
One of the questions that people ask me all the time, just because I'm so involved with Israel and spend so much time there, is how can a parent stay in Israel knowing that their child is, there's a very good chance that when you have a child, that child will go to war. People cannot understand the mindset of a terrorist because it's literally not even in our radar. When you don't have the proper frame of reference, it's impossible to really fully understand the mindset that the Israelis have always lived under this threat. People who live in Israel for a reason. Some people, yes, you just live there, but you could always leave. The people who are in Israel are the protectors of our nation. And again, when I say nation, I'm talking about the Jewish nation, not just the state of Israel. It's impossible for us as Americans to understand that, yes, they do know that when they have a child, there is a chance that they will be called to defend their nation. And let me just be clear, this is not the same as children being brought up to be martyrs, to be willing to blow themselves up for a nation. It's a very, very different thing. A child in Israel is born to protect a legacy, and a child born in Gaza is born to destroy a legacy.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm obviously going to push back on the comparison. I know you weren't making a comparison, but I still have to say it so that it's not taken out of context.
Sure.
I understand where you were going with that. You were saying that we can't understand the mindset of a terrorist. You can't understand the mindset of Israel. I get it. Obviously, for starters, I want to say that you said that, you know, someone who goes to the army here is the defender of the Jewish people, of our nation. I'm not going to say inaccurate, but that's not 100% the truth. The truth is that when you go to the Israeli army, you are not defending Israel or the Jewish people. You are defending Western civilization. Anybody who doesn't accept that is just ignoring reality. They say it. Radical Islam, no matter whatever fancy name you want to give it, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, it's all the same garbage. They say what their goal is. Their goal is in Israel. Their goal is Western civilization. Period. When you teach a kid that they want to glorify life, and that's the fundamental, they glorify death, we glorify life. Just fundamental difference, right? But when you teach someone from a young age that life is the ultimate ideal, living life and living a life that makes the world a better place, then they're going to do everything they can to defend that value. And that is what Israel, and that's what Israeli kids do. They go to the army, it's called Israel Defense Forces. Israel's never started a war ever. We are here to defend and to glorify life. That's the story of the Jewish people.
It is interesting, but the truth is that so much of this rabid and most violent anti-Semitism is coming from the younger generations, which is our future generation of leaders. And many of these kids do not even look at legacy media. They don't even look at mass media. They are 100% TikTok, plus a little bit of maybe Instagram in there. When I say I hate to ask this, I mean, I really hate to ask this. And I'm going to say it for a third time just to emphasize for our listeners. I hate to ask this because I truly believe in playing fair. But it's been so well documented that the anti-Israel propaganda machine has flooded social media with bots, which in turn skew the algorithms and simultaneously drown out the pro-Israel voice. Is there a kosher way to impact the narrative if we employed the same strategy?
It's a valid question that I've been asked 1,000 times. So I understand why you're saying you hate to ask it, but it's a valid question. The answer is, in my opinion, unequivocally no. Because even if we, let's say, play their game and stoop to their level, and no one, I don't need to tell you, I don't need to remind you that Israel is at the pinnacle of the world of technology. We could program these bots in 12 seconds, right? We could, quote unquote, by that, win this quote unquote war. But are we really winning? Is that really victory? Again, we, at the most foundational level, we are sticking to the truth. And by the way, not only when the truth is convenient, when Israel makes mistakes, we stick to the truth as well, right? And that has happened, even in this war. So I don't think that if we stoop to their level and do that we will have accomplished anything long term. That would actually be us losing the war, because we need to stick to the truth. We need to tell the story as it is, even if by definition, our narrative, by definition, will never be as sexy as their narrative. It just won't, because their narrative, the fundamental, right, is you are oppressing us, free Palestine. That's it. If I'm 95 years old or I'm 3 years old, I can understand that narrative, right? It's just so simple, and it appeals to everyone, right? It appeals to, obviously, to the radical side. It also appeals to the social, warriors. Oh my gosh, they're the underdog. Let's fight for the Palestinians. When, again, the irony and the paradox here is that the Palestinians are throwing gay people off roofs. Like they're not ashamed to say that homosexuality deserves death. They say it like straight up. They're proud of it. And then there's these, the LGBTQ for Palestine. Like what? Again, just another thing on that item, another item on that long list of things that make zero sense. Zero. Just to answer your question, though, I don't think that would be a good tactic. I think that would be an absolute loss for us. It wouldn't be a victory. Even if we were able to beat them at their own game, that to me would not be victory.
Going back to the concept of Israeli DNA, if we go way back, even as far back as Ben Gurion, as long as we know we're doing the right thing, we don't have to defend ourselves. But there's also the fact that in the information age, even if that is the Israeli DNA, we also happen to live in a world where PIL, is that what's called? The whatever missile that accidentally hits their own hospital, in 1 second, the world assumes that it was Israel and there's riots.
PIJ,
yeah. I think that leaning on these just sort of like historical moral values, sometimes maybe there's space for evolution. I mean, there's been so much criticism, really for decades now, of the Israeli PR machine. I think personally in this war, like the game has been stepped up massively. We're seeing daily briefing. The prime minister, by the IDF, by Kogat. I mean, they're getting the word out. But we have to understand that Israel can talk themselves blue in the face, and they do. But they can't control the heavily biased and anti-Israel elements of the mass media or make them print anything they don't want to. I heard the prime minister spokesman the other day saying, I'm going to say this for like the millionth time, and no one is reporting. There are something like 700 trucks of aid waiting on the Gaza side of the border that haven't been distributed. He's like, I'll just say it again. I say it every single day. That's not what makes it into the news. This has been an uphill battle over a steaming dunghill. The media loves an underdog. Hard stop. Is there any way at all for Israel to turn this media narrative around, besides saying, okay, well, why don't we turn off Iron Dome for a week, let all our people be killed again? Because there was that blip, there was that second, there was that moment on October 7th when the world said, what, Israel? Oh my goodness, this is horrible. And I say a second because a second later, the narrative turned.
Yeah, I mean, even before Israel, fired up one F-16, the war was even before we fired one bullet, they were already criticized. It was ridiculous. It was as if it was coordinated. By the way, that's a whole different discussion. But just think about this. I mean, you tell me, what would you click on, right? You're scrolling your Twitter feed, your Facebook feed, and you see two posts, right? You see a post saying, look at all these trucks on the border of Gaza, Israel sending humanitarian aid. Or you see another post with a dead baby. Now the baby's a doll. It's a toy, but it's a baby with blood streaming. What are you clicking on? Right? The odds are working against us. Our narrative will never be as sexy as their narrative. It's just by definition, especially amplified by the fact that they just don't care about truth. I mean, there's literal like Twitter accounts that are dedicated to exposing their blatant lie. I mean, it's gotten comical. I understand if I'm a journalist and I need my job, I need to support my family. I'm not going to get clicks if I put a picture of 700 trucks, Israeli trucks of foreign aid on the Gaza border. That is not going to get me clicks, and I will be fired. But if I put a dead baby who just happens to be a doll, but let's put that aside because it's a dead baby, that's going to get me clicks, and I'm going to get a raise at work. What do you expect them to do?
Well, I think that Pallywood, which is, I think it's a pretty big story if someone were willing to break it at the New York Times, or, perhaps they have, but if they did, it got buried. No pun intended. But I do believe that there's a lot of story to be had there that's purposely not being said. There is a lot of investigative reporting that would be just as intriguing and just as engaging. But I mean, people like Barry Weiss, who left the New York Times. I mean, among others, the last few months we had a report from the BBC and of course the NPR, and just how endemic the anti-Semitism in the anti-Israel, that if you submit a story that supports Israel, it is summarily dismissed. It literally cannot be printed.
I think you just said I think, if I'm not mistaken, this entire interview, for the first time you said the word anti-Semitism. And I'm going to say that, people don't like when we play the anti-Semitism card. Again, I'll say it a million times, like the list of things here. If you're going to take anti-Semitism out of the picture, then explain to me what it means when people chant in the streets of America and the UK and France and every other, globalize the Intifada. What does that mean? Someone explain to me what that means without using the word anti-Semitism, because I'll tell you what it means. Intifada means violent uprising, blowing up buses, killing as many Jews as you can. When you say globalize the Intifada, what you are saying is kill as many Jews as you can on a global scale. Was it an open air prison? Or was it paradise that was destroyed by the Israeli genocide? Which one was it? Because before, it was an open air prison, right? Poor Palestinians in open air prison. Open air prison? We left Gaza 20 years ago. There wasn't a single, talk about ethnic cleansing. We ethnically cleansed Gaza from Jews. There wasn't a single Jew in Gaza. What open air prison? But you know what? If you want to call it an open air prison, call it an open air prison, but don't change your narrative after they commit the darkest day in the history of the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and Israel retaliates. All of a sudden, that place that you called an open air prison yesterday has become paradise? What is with the hypocrisy? It's staggering that otherwise intelligent people believe these lies. It's wild.
Well, another amazing hypocrisy in the use of the word anti-Semitism, and that I was thinking about this yesterday, and we're not allowed to mention the Holocaust because we're playing the victim card, like the most horrific mass murder in history, or at least in modern history, if not all of history. We're not allowed to invoke that. But the irony of what you said, if we say anti-Semitism, then we are weaponizing a word against the word people who are saying it. And yet the very word Islamophobia was created to shut down discussion, that they use it in exactly the same way that they accuse us of using it, even though we're legitimately using it. So if you say, 80% of Gazans in every poll that have come out support Hamas, all they have to say is that is Islamophobia. And they say that specifically to shut down the conversation.
Yeah, if we really want to get into that topic, and again, you tell me if you don't want to go there, but forget Gaza and Hamas for 1 second. By all data that we have at our disposal, anywhere between 15 to 25% of global Muslims are fundamentalists. Now, 15 to 25%, that means 75 to 85% of them are peaceful people. Fantastic, right? Except one thing. We're talking about 300 million people dedicated to the destruction of the West. Meaning, even if you want to go conservative, we're talking about 180 million people. You can't just say, people have an illogical fear of Muslims. There are 300 million people who are dedicated to mining your destruction in the name of Islam. To fear that is not irrational fear. It's very real. And as far as, the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic thing, again, not many people will say this because they'll get penalized or punished or fired or whatever for saying it. But luckily, I don't have anyone that can fire me and I can say whatever the hell I want. To say the sentence, I am not anti-Semitic, I'm only anti-Zionist, is about the stupidest thing that a person can let out of their mouth. 95% of Jews are Zionists. If you are anti-Zionist, you are anti-Jewish. Let alone the fact that Zionism, by its definition, is the movement to bring Jews back to their homeland after the world's worst genocide in history. If you're against that, in a world where there are tens of Muslim countries and tens of Christian countries, you do not believe the Jews deserve one country after everything we've experienced, don't tell me you're not anti-Jewish. You are anti-Jewish. There's no, I'm anti-Zionism, I'm anti-Israel, but not anti-Jewish. If you're anti-Israel, you're anti-Jewish. There's no sugarcoating that. That is a fact. Anybody who says otherwise is being dishonest.